Now, a memorial service has bbeen taking place in London to mark the 20th anniversary of the 7th of July bombings, which were Britain's deadliest Islamist suicide attacks. The service has been taking place at St. Paul's Cathedral, attended by the families of the 52 people killed, survivors and members of the emergency services. White petals were dropped from the whispering gallery of the cathedral as the names of the victims were read out. Today's service also honoured the selfless bravery of those who ran towards danger to help strangers in distress. In his message to the country, King Charles reflected on how Britain had stood firm against those who sought division. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from London by the international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskovic. Dr. Laskovic, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Would it be fair to say that in Britain, where you are today, is as resonant as 9/11 in the US? Because it was on this day, known as 7/7, that suicide attackers detonated bombs on the Underground and a bus, bringing terror and havoc to London.
Although it is a similar event, and although it is important, I think, to be honest, the event in New York is much bigger, resonates much further. Far more people died in New York. However, it is an event, and many British people do, of course, still remember it. And it is, of course, a very sad event in its way.
And I mean, just take us back to that day 20 years ago. I mean, were you in London when that attack happened? I wonder what you remember of the horror of that day.
Well, I was indeed in London, but you have to bear in mind that London also had IRA bombs here and terror bombing. And of course, before my time, it is true, the Germans bombed London. And on the whole, Londoners are very resilient. And in fact, it was commented by many people abroad about this aspect. It's a more stoical nation. So although it is a very sad event and today rightly remembered, people carried on as before with their business. So to say that terror struck into the hearts of Londoners in the sense of fear is going too far. London's very resilient and withstood this attack and indeed coped with it very well.
And of course, as you hinted there, it was Britain's first Islamist terror attack. I mean, they've been marking the day at St. Paul's Cathedral. Tell us how they've been remembering that awful event. I mean, one imagines with a certain amount of grief and sadness and lots of quite amazing testimony.
Yes, I think the last is the testimony is most important. There was grief, and of course the event is remembered. But it has to be said, it is not seen in the sense of it being a huge, appalling disaster claiming many lives. It is a bad event. It was an event which London coped with. It was an event which affected people to some degree to this day, but it has been dealt with. So rather, the good news from it is that London went on and in fact has carried on, and that these events should be remembered. But also what should be remembered is that many people did their best to cope with it. They helped the injured, the wounded, the emergency services, of course, did well as usual. And so therefore, from that point of view, it is also a testimony to London that it has coped with this shocking event very well indeed.
And of course, while so many people remember the terror and the horror of that day, I mean, it's the worst of humanity, really. They also remember the bravery and the courage of the emergency services as the best of humanity, don't they?
Quite so. I mean, the emergency services, as I said, did very well, extremely well, coped with the situation. And many people, of course, also members of the public, helped. And so it was a day in which many people pulled together. So in these disasters, London stands firm, as it has always done. And it's thanks, of course, to the many people who work in London and help out in these matters, above all the emergency services, that in fact the horror of the day was mitigated.
But is there perhaps also a sense of injustice that there wasn't the public inquiry that was requested, and there wasn't the scrutiny of what went wrong? And many of those who survived with injuries, both physical and psychological, I was listening to quite a few of them today, say they feel like they're living the life sentence that the people who were involved in the attack should be serving.
Yes, there is, of course, this aspect of people, even if they survive, either because they weren't there and it's their families or their friends who were killed or injured, or even those who survived physically the attack, that it's not only stays with you, but of course you live on. In that sense, it is indeed a type of life sentence. The other point you've stated is very important, the absence of an inquiry. I would hope one could still be held, even if it is many years after the event.
And how does the impact of that 7/7 nightmare feed into British politics today and fears about things like immigration, etc., in the UK?
Although an event like this is, of course, an event to be noted, the British on the whole are more fair-minded and do not regard this single event as in some way saying that all immigration is wrong as a result. They're more balanced in their views. I, of course, mean the average person, that some of the extremists may well and try to use events like this. But please note, not just this event, they use many such things in the sense of trying to stir up public, agitate the public against the immigrants in a more violent way. But it's never, I think, going to really work with the British people, trying to make this event in some sort of cause célèbre that will result in many immigrants suffering as a result.
Dr. Lascovich, I want to thank you very much indeed. Dr. Marek Lascovich is the International Affairs Analyst who was talking to me on the line from London.